What if I told you there's a plant that produces more protein per square foot than an entire cattle farm? And you can grow it on your kitchen windowsill in just 5 days with nothing but a jar and tap water. No soil, no sunlight, no garden, no experience required. And here's the number that stops everyone cold. This plant's seeds contain up to 40% protein by dry weight. Beef sits at around 26%. That means this forgotten plant seed out-proteins animal muscle. NASA studied it for deep space missions. The United Nations called it one of the most promising food crops of the 20th century. And then the Western world almost completely forgot it existed. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what it is, exactly why it disappeared, and exactly how to grow it yourself starting today in 5 minutes or less. Stay with me, because the step most beginners skip on day 3 is the one that ruins an entire batch, and I'm going to make sure that never happens to you. Here's something worth thinking about. Walk into any grocery store this week and spend 60 seconds standing in the meat aisle. Watch what happens. People pick up packages, check the price, and put them back down. That mental calculation happening in real time, that moment of hesitation, is becoming more common every single week in every city across the country. Protein has become expensive. The supply chain that delivers it is long, fragile, and completely outside your control. But here's what most people don't realize. 3 blocks from that same grocery store, someone might be producing fresh, complete protein on their kitchen counter. No land, no animals, no refrigeration needed, no supply chain involved at all, just a container, tap water, and 5 minutes of attention per day. The plant making that possible has been growing in Southeast Asia and Papua New Guinea for over 2,000 years. It has fed entire communities through droughts, wars, and famines. And the Western agricultural system largely ignored it, for reasons that have everything to do with economics and nothing to do with nutrition. Today, we're going to change that. Let's get into it. What is this plant, and why does it have 4 wings? The plant is called the winged bean. Botanists named it Sophocarpus tetragonalibus. Tetragonalibus meaning 4-angled pod, because its seed pods grow with 4 distinctive longitudinal wings running along their length. It's visually unlike anything else in a garden, and that visual uniqueness is the least interesting thing about it. In Papua New Guinea, where it has been cultivated for over 2,000 years, it carries dozens of local names across different communities, each one representing generations of cooking traditions, agricultural knowledge, and survival wisdom built around this single plant. In the Philippines, Indonesia, India, and across Southeast Asia, it appears in local markets and home gardens as an everyday food so familiar it's practically invisible to the people who've always eaten it. The West noticed it late. But when Western science finally looked closely, what it found was extraordinary. In 1975, the National Academy of Sciences assembled a panel of agricultural scientists in Washington, D.C. with a specific mission to identify underutilized tropical plants with exceptional nutritional potential. They reviewed hundreds of candidates. They selected the winged bean for special attention. The report they published used language unusual for a scientific document. They called it a supermarket on a stalk. That phrase stuck, because it's accurate. The numbers that should have changed everything here is why that phrase earned its place. Nearly every single part of the winged bean plant is edible. The young pods taste similar to green beans and can be eaten raw or cooked. The mature seeds contain protein levels that laboratory analyses have measured between 29% and 42%, depending on variety, compared to beef's dry weight protein of approximately 26%. A plant seed that out-proteins animal muscle. That fact alone should have been a nutritional revolution. The leaves provide nutrition comparable to spinach. The flowers are edible. And then there's the part almost nobody in the West ever sees, the underground tubers. These root structures can reach 20% protein content. To understand why that matters, compare it to a potato. typically around 2% protein. The winged bean tuber delivers roughly 10 times more protein than the most commonly eaten tuber on Earth. But here's what makes this plant truly disruptive to the conventional food system, and why it quietly disappeared from Western agricultural interest. The winged bean is a nitrogen-fixing legume. In its root system, it forms nodules with soil bacteria that pull nitrogen directly from the atmosphere and convert it into plant nutrition. In practical terms, the winged bean fertilizes itself. No synthetic fertilizer required, no recurring chemical purchases, no dependence on the industrial input supply chain. In tropical climates, it behaves like a perennial plant it once, and it returns year after year. It produces part of its own fertility. It demands fewer external inputs after establishment. Every one of those qualities makes it extraordinary for food security, and every one of those same qualities makes it unattractive to an agricultural system built on selling seeds, fertilizers, and chemicals year after year. Real solutions don't always become mainstream. Sometimes they disappear precisely because they work too well independently. What happens when a seed wakes up, and why it changes? Everything now. Here's the part most people never hear, and it's where this plant goes from impressive to genuinely extraordinary. You don't need a tropical farm to access the best nutritional benefits of the winged bean. You don't need soil. You don't need a garden. You don't even need direct sunlight. What you need is to understand what happens inside a seed during germination, because when a seed wakes up, its entire chemistry transforms. Enzymes that were dormant become active. Complex starches convert into simple sugars. Proteins restructure into more digestible forms. Vitamins are synthesized from precursors that didn't exist as vitamins in the dry seed. Here's what the research shows in specific numbers. Trypsin inhibitors, compounds naturally present in seeds that interfere with protein digestion, can decrease by 60 to 80% during germination. These compounds exist as a chemical defense in dormant seeds. Once the seed germinates and growth becomes the priority, that defense switches off. The protein that was partially locked away becomes accessible. Protein digestibility improves from around 65% in raw dry seeds to over 85% in properly sprouted seeds. That's not a small difference. That means sprouting doesn't just make the protein easier to access, it fundamentally changes how much of the protein your body can actually use. Vitamin C tells an equally remarkable story. Dry seeds contain almost none. After several days of active sprouting, the seed manufactures vitamin C as part of its preparation for growth, and you harvest that nutritional peak at precisely the right moment. The critical harvest window is between day 4 and day 5. At that point, the cotyledons, the first structures that emerge from the seed, have fully expanded and concentrated maximum nutrition, but the plant hasn't yet diverted energy into long stems and extensive root growth. Day 4 to 5 is the peak of both nutritional density and texture quality. Miss that window and you're still getting good nutrition, but you're leaving the best harvest on the counter. The complete 5-minute daily method, and the mistake that ruins most batches. Before I walk you through this step by step, here's the mistake that ruins most beginners' first batches. They leave standing water in the container. Standing water is the single fastest way to grow mold instead of sprouts. Every step of this method is designed around one golden rule. Drainage is everything. Keep that in mind and the rest becomes simple. Step 1. Get your seeds. Winged bean seeds are sold dried in Asian grocery stores, sometimes under names like Goa bean or angled bean. Online seed suppliers and seed exchange networks also carry them specifically for sprouting. 1 kilogram costs very little, and unlike buying food for a single meal, you're buying dozens of future harvests. You're not purchasing food, you're purchasing a production system. Step 2. Inspect before you soak. Take 30 seconds to look through your seeds. Remove any that are cracked, discolored, visibly damaged, or showing any sign of mold. Damaged seeds are the entry point for fungi that spread through an entire batch. 30 seconds of inspection can save an entire week of wasted effort. Step 3. Soak place seeds in a glass jar or bowl. Cover with room temperature water. Use approximately 3 times as much water as seed volume because they will absorb water and expand significantly. Soak for 12 to 24 hours. Less than 12 hours and germination will be uneven. More than 24 hours and bacterial growth becomes a real risk. That window matters more than most beginners realize. Step 4. Drain completely after soaking. Drain all water thoroughly. Rinse once with fresh room temperature water. Drain again completely. No standing water at any point from here forward. Step 5. Choose your container. A commercial sprouting tray, a colander lined with cloth, a window box with drainage holes, or any perforated container works. The container matters far less than the drainage. Whatever you use, standing water cannot accumulate. Step 6. Position away from direct sunlight. This surprises most people. Sprouts develop better in indirect light or even in shade. Direct sunlight heats the seed mass, accelerates bacterial growth, and creates bitter flavor. A countertop away from the window is ideal. A cabinet with the door slightly open works perfectly. Indirect light only. Step 7. Rinse twice daily. Without exception, morning and evening. Use room temperature water. Rinse gently so all seeds get wet. Drain thoroughly every single time. Each rinse removes metabolic waste and introduces fresh oxygen. Skipping even one rinse is the second fastest way to end up with a batch that smells wrong. Twice a day, no exceptions. Step 8. Monitor temperature between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius is ideal. Below that range, growth slows dramatically. Above it, contamination risk increases sharply. Most home kitchens stay within this range naturally. In very hot summers, find a cooler corner. In cold winters, avoid drafty windowsills and find the warmest stable spot in your kitchen. What to expect each day, your visual progress guide. Knowing what you're looking at each day removes all the uncertainty that makes beginners abandon their first batch too early. Day 2. Small white root tips will emerge from the seeds. This is your confirmation that germination has begun successfully. Everything is working. Day 3. Roots lengthen visibly. The cotyledons, the seed's first 2 structures, begin to separate from each other. The seed is actively transforming. Day 4. Cotyledons expand fully and take on a pale greenish or yellowish color. Protein digestibility is rising. Trypsin inhibitors are breaking down. Vitamin C is being synthesized. This is the beginning of your harvest window. Day 5. Maximum expansion, maximum nutritional density, maximum texture quality before the plant diverts energy into elongating stems and developing roots. This is your ideal harvest day. To harvest, cut sprouts at the base or lift the entire mat from a tray. Rinse thoroughly and drain completely. Store in the refrigerator in a container lined with a paper towel to absorb excess moisture. Properly stored, they stay fresh for 5 to 7 days, but flavor and texture peak within the first 48 hours of harvest. Eat them soon. How to have fresh protein every single day of the year. Here's the simple system that turns a single batch into continuous daily production. Start your second container on the same day you harvest your first. 2 containers rotating on a 5-day cycle means you always have one batch ready to harvest, while the next is 3 days from its peak. 5 minutes of attention per day. Fresh, complete protein available every day of the year, regardless of season, regardless of weather, regardless of what's happening to food prices anywhere in the supply chain. Let's look at what that actually produces. A standard 12-inch window container cycling through the 5-day process can yield meaningful protein harvests under normal home conditions. Running 2 containers with 6 cycles per month creates a consistent fresh protein source that requires no refrigeration during production, no cooking during sprouting, and no special equipment beyond what most kitchens already have. Compare that to what producing the equivalent protein from beef actually requires. Raising an animal for 18 to 24 months, tons of feed grain, most of which humans could eat directly, substantial water and land, veterinary care, transport, slaughter infrastructure, refrigerated storage and distribution, an entire industrial chain that must function perfectly at every link for that protein to reach your plate. Your sprouting system requires tap water, a container, and 5 minutes of daily attention. If you have seeds, you have a protein bank. If you have a container, you have a production system. That's not an exaggeration. That's the practical definition of food sovereignty. Why this plant disappeared, and why that's worth understanding. The winged bean's story is worth sitting with for a moment before we finish. In the 1980s, agricultural research stations across tropical regions launched serious programs to develop and promote this plant. Research centers in Asia developed improved varieties. Stations in Nigeria and India tested cultivation methods. Agricultural organizations promoted it as a candidate for strengthening protein security in communities where meat is expensive or unreliable. For a brief window, it seemed like the winged bean was going to transform how the world thought about plant protein. Then research funding shifted, programs were discontinued, attention moved to other projects, and the winged bean quietly returned to its traditional regions in Southeast Asia, where it had never left in the first place, still feeding families in yards and gardens and local markets, still doing exactly what it had always done for 2,000 years. The reason it didn't transform Western agriculture has nothing to do with the plant's biology. It has everything to do with its economics. A crop that fertilizes itself, returns year after year without replanting, and requires minimal purchased inputs, is not an attractive product to an agricultural industry built on recurring sales. Seeds understand water, temperature, and time. They don't understand market incentives. And in that gap between what feeds people and what profits systems, some of the most powerful foods in human history got quietly set aside. You don't have to wait for that to change. You can start today with a jar, some seeds, and 5 minutes. If this video gave you something genuinely useful, hit that like button right now. It's the most direct way to help this information reach the people who need it most. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Every week we go deep on forgotten plants, traditional food wisdom, home-growing skills, and the natural living knowledge your great-grandparents considered basic literacy. Ring that notification bell so you never miss one, and leave a comment below. Are you starting your first batch today? Have you grown winged bean sprouts before? What day did you harvest and how did they taste? Your experience helps everyone watching build theirs. The seeds are waiting. The windowsill is ready. The 5 minutes are yours. See you in the next one.